G'day YouTubers, welcome back. Today I got a new video that I'm pretty excited to share with you guys. 20 years ago in 2005 they gave us Dark Knights, Spaceship Rebellions, Robot Revolutions and Hellish Anti-Heroes. Today I'd just like to share with you guys some iconic films that are turning 20 this year that really shaped 2005. From box office juggernauts to cult favourites as well as animated underdogs. We have 6 iconic films that are turning 20 this year. And just before we get stuck into it guys, quickly I'd just like to thank all my old subscribers for liking and subscribing, as well as any new viewers. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get stuck into these iconic movies. Now the first movie I want to chat about turning 25 this year happens to be one of my personal favourites. Now before Doctor Strange opened portals or Deadpool broke the fourth wall, there was Constantine. A chain-smoking, demon-slaying exorcist with nothing left to lose. Released on the 24th of February 2005, it came out with mixed reviews, but it's ended up, after 20 years, being turned into a cult classic. And without a doubt, in my eyes, this beast of a movie has stood time in that 25 years. And in my honest opinion, seeing this in 2005 as a kid was one of my best movies I've ever seen back then. Now John Constantine actually comes being based off the Hellblazer comics that come from DC Vertigo's imprints. Now John Constantine's character in the movie is a cynical, paranormal detective pretty much, trying to buy his way back into heaven and battle cancer. Now Keanu Reeves plays the role, and of course it's less British than what the actual comics are meant to be, but I feel he brings over another anti-hero that we really needed. As well, Rachel Weisz co-stars as a detective trying to work out what happened to her sister with a mysterious death. And this movie isn't your typical superhero movie. It seems to delve into Catholic guilt, existential dread, and biblical warfare, which was kind of a new thing for the 2005 movies. Now the visuals and atmosphere in Constantine, the film is drenched with a grungy green and a lot of reds, which makes LA really feel like purgatory. And hell itself, like really, when you first seen that, it looked like an apocalyptic wasteland, wind-swept, and very unsettling, and you would not want to, definitely not want to go to hell in the Constantine time, that's for sure. And Keanu Reeves' performance in Constantine was understated, quiet, and really intense. Like, he really deeply got involved with being John Constantine. And he actually makes you feel like he's playing John Constantine, a man that's stuck between two worlds, the real life and the underworld. And obviously the theme behind this movie was sin, redemption, and, really just about being human and the morals that we live by. And it's honestly raised some questions with me too, like, can a damn man actually do good deeds to be able to gain his way back into heaven? And quickly as well, the supporting cast, you had Tilda Swinton playing the Angel Gabriel. Now, I'm normally not a Tilda Swinton fan, but when I seen her playing the Angel Gabriel, she did really well in this movie. And the other person that was in this movie was Peter Stormare. Now, I gotta admit, out of all the devils, all the people who played Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call him, in any movie, I feel the Satan out of Constantine was the best portrayed.
You're the one soul I would come up here to collect myself.
And it's what makes me wait for the end of Constantine every time, just to see him pop in there for his little 15 minutes of fame. But the scenes that he does and how he portrays Satan is just intense, and it really makes you feel like he's the bad guy in the movie. And of course, still in 2005, this movie took its hit from the critics as well as, the comic book people. The comic book people straight up thought that, Keanu Reeves shouldn't have played John Constantine because he wasn't British, he didn't have blue eyes, and he wasn't blonde, which I guess, that's not Keanu at all, is it? And also, well, critics smashed the storyline and the plot, saying that, it didn't really, match together, and it was a bit uneven and just scattered throughout the movie. It didn't actually really tie together, which, I don't really know if I agree with them myself, because I actually feel that Constantine was a really awesome movie, especially for 2005. The graphics, the special effects, even the story itself was good. Yeah, he didn't actually look exactly like the comic books, but you got to expect that. So what's to come for the future for John Constantine? Well, realistically, we have heard that Constantine 2 is in the works with Keanu Reeves, but don't want to hold my breath or cross my fingers because you can't really trust too much of what's on the internet. And my final thoughts on Constantine was I feel in 2005 the critics and the comic book people misunderstood it and just realistically didn't understand it. And of course, being that this is 25 years old, I feel that it's definitely held its own with all the other new movies that have come out. Being that now it's a cult classic, can't be forgotten, and it is still a beast of a movie. We love Keanu and Constantine. Now, let's get on to the next one, guys. The next one we got is an animated masterpiece, I feel. Do you remember Robots?
Welcome to the club.
The animated underdog with heart, humour, and a world full of metal. It may not have the Pixar logo, but 20 years later it's still charming, fast-paced, and a surprisingly deep movie about invention and belonging. Now this animated bad boy was dropped on us on the 24th of March and was directed by Chris Wedge. Now it's set in Robot City where you follow a little fella called Rodney Copperbottom, a little small town robot who dreams big of wanting to be an inventor just like his big time hero. But of course, like any small town fella going to the city, once he arrives at the city he realises that it's not exactly what he thought and how it's run and corrupted by big evil CEOs.
What? Perfect. That'll be $50.
$50 for what?
A beautiful picture of your first moment in Robot City.
I feel Robots is what happens when you cross a follow your dream story and corporate capitalism. And a lot of nuts and bolts. Now what worked for this movie 25 years ago, it was visually stunning and definitely ahead of the curve. Every environment in Robot City may be metallic, but it's also full of life. Robot City is like if steampunk had a baby with the Rube Goldberg machine. With all the intricate chain reactions and the wacky inventions and the highways that they have on that.
Just put your head between your legs.
Huh?
This movie still holds up today. Now the voice cast for this movie, I've got to say, was pretty epic to say the least. Now first up, playing Rodney, of course, one of my personal favourite actors, Ewan McGregor. And he came across as warm and creative in that role.
Oh, here. Let me help you with that.
No, I'll do it myself. I have my pride,
But the next fella's voice, he absolutely stole the show as Fender in this one. A hyperactive, mismatched robot with a ton of one-liners.
Come on. You can bunk with me.
We'll ignore the gossip.
I feel that Robin Williams' performance, or just his voice in Robots alone, led me to, hang on to it as an adult now and show my kids that movie, and they even love it themselves.
We've come to rescue our friend, you evil bag of bolts, and you will be defeated by the very outmosts that you scorn and detest.
As well as you had Halle Berry, Greg Kinnear, and Mel Brooks to round out this ensemble. Now that's a pretty epic little cast you got there, guys. Now I feel the theme of this movie was staying true to your dreams in the face of pressure. It doesn't matter what comes down on you, if that's a dream that you want, you follow that dream all the way to the end, even if it kills you. As well as valuing the older stuff than always getting new stuff and upgrading. Like myself, I prefer older cars than the new, more electronic cars that we have these days. And I feel underneath all the gears and gags, Robots tells kids and adults, it doesn't matter how broken you are, you still matter. And of course, not a lot of people actually know about Robots because it was a little bit foreshadowed by the Pixar movement that was happening back then. Like The Incredibles came out as well as the Pixar box office hit Finding Nemo. And pretty much people just overlooked anything that was not Pixar back then, where it didn't really matter to me. If it had a good story or a good cast, I was going to check it out. As well as the critics said that the story and the formula was too fast-paced and frantic. It didn't really have that much of, a solid story to go by, which... yeah, again, don't really agree with them. I feel that the story was very heartfelt, and by the end of the movie, you understood what it meant.
That's Bigwell, Dad. The greatest robot in the world. Besides you.
And as always, most of the time, the critics always like to say that Robin Williams, took a little bit overboard, went a little bit crazy. But hey, that was his comedy, and he was still, even though he's gone, he's still a legend to this day with all his comedy and the movies that he's done. To me, it feels like this movie was trying to be deep, fun, and it was. It never disappointed. It's still a great watch right now to watch. Like my kids watched it just the other day, and never disappoints. Good old Robots. And Robots didn't actually get a sequel, but I don't really think it needed to. Robots finished off how it should, and it was a perfect movie the way it was. Its positive message, incredible world building, and Robin Williams' humour in that movie is just an everlasting, legendary touch to that movie. You know, it may not be the flashiest movie of 2005, but Robots is a beautifully built movie that reminds us that the best parts of us don't need to be upgraded. Alrighty guys, let's move on to the next one. The next one, guys, is a real banger, so let's check this bad boy out. Now, this movie has resonated with me for all my life, guys, and can't even believe that it's 25 years old myself. Now, this is where the fun ends, or so we thought. Now, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith wasn't just the end of the prequel trilogy. It was the final piece that we needed, guys, to see Anakin Skywalker's tragic fall from light to dark. And 20 years on, it still remains one of the most emotional movies and meme-worthy movies of all the Star Wars films.
Hello there.
Now, this movie, of course, as I can remember, was released on the 19th of May, 2005, and, usually directed by George Lucas. And, after he got mixed reactions from The Phantom Menace, which not a lot of people were that happy with, and then he came back a little bit with Attack of the Clones, which was still good, don't get me wrong on that one, and then he just had to come forward and strike home with Revenge of the Sith. Now, I feel it's one of the most epic of all the Star Wars because it's set in the end of the Clone Wars. You see Anakin's dark side fall.
What have I done?
As well as you see the end of the Jedi Order, pretty much. As well as then you get to see our new two hopefuls, Luke and Leia, be born.
We need to operate quickly if we are to save the babies.
Babies?
She's carrying twins.
To me, in many ways, it wasn't just the end of the prequels, it was the birth of a legacy. Now, what worked with Star Wars Revenge of the Sith? Honestly, the emotional weight. Yeah, the downfall of a hero. Padme's heartbreaking. A hero that turned from, being the leader of most of the Star Wars to end up being the actual Sith leader.
We shall have peace.
Obi-Wan felt like he'd been betrayed.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
A couple other good things it had going for it were the lightsaber duels. It had two of the most epic lightsaber duels that you'll ever see. Other than, I feel, in Attack of the Clones, Yoda vs. Count Dooku, that was pretty cool. It was the first time I seen Yoda, crack one off. But seeing Yoda take on Darth Sidious was pretty intense. And then, the end fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Of course, if you watched the originals, you know how it worked out, but it was still pretty cool to see. And, one of the big things in that one, of course, was finally revealing Darth Sidious or Emperor Palpatine. And Ian McDermott's performance in that, even from the originals playing Darth Sidious and to now, still is the best that you'll ever get. And, of course, one of the things that still gets me today, that you get to see a lot of memes, and, it's around everywhere. It's good old Execute Order 66.
Execute Order 66.
Which, of course, if you didn't know, was the order that ended up wiping out all the Jedis. That's when the clones turned, and enough said. If you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. As well as I feel on this one, if Empire Strikes Back showed us the actual dark side, I feel this movie showed us how the dark side can seduce you into really turning into the Sith that they want you to be. And as usual with all movies, it had its criticism. One of the main ones that they were saying was Hayden Christensen's actually acting that way. Now, I actually didn't feel that he did too bad as playing Anakin. Sometimes people just, take it a bit too far and like to criticise people, where I feel he did a really good job playing Anakin. As well as George Lucas was trying to strike back after copping a couple of knocks for Phantom Menace. A lot of people didn't like it. I personally still love it. It's one of my favourites, especially the pod racer scene. Like, come on guys, you cannot beat that. And then especially when you actually get, if you've seen the movie, then eventually, if you've got a Nintendo 64, you got to play it, like I did, and still do myself, Star Wars Pod Racer. Now, my final verdict and legacy on Revenge of the Sith, I can't really say much. It is one of my favourite Star Wars movies, if not probably my all-time Star Wars favourite movie. Other than, actually no, I'd probably say, yeah, be between that and Empire Strikes Back, 'cause I really love the Hoth battles. But this movie to me is a crucial bridge between the Star Warses. If you didn't actually get this, you wouldn't have seen Luke and Leia being born, Anakin falling to the dark side, realistically why Obi-Wan was so withdrawn in the way he was, which was of course because he got betrayed and he lost his best friend. So I feel even 20 years later, Revenge of the Sith still stands tall. Not just as a turning point in the galaxy, but a moment when the saga embraced tragedy. Alright guys, let's move on to the next movie that we have lined up, which is a 2005 powerhouse, I feel. Alright, before the MCU and before the Snyderverse, Batman Begins redefined what a superhero movie could be.
What the hell are you? I'm Batman.
No capes, no camp, just fear and shadows. And a billionaire with a trauma complex.
Bats are nocturnal.
Bats may be, but even for billionaire playboys, 3 o'clock is pushing it.
20 years later, it still casts a long shadow over the genre. Now, Batman Begins was released on June 15th, 2005, and was directed by Christopher Nolan. And it was meant to be a bit of a reprisal from the Batman and Robin cartoonish Batman that they really didn't like, but still, a lot of the 90 kids really liked it. And of course, usual story with old Batman, Christian Bale, playing Batman, travels around the world learning martial arts, joins the League of Shadows, and then becomes Batman.
You know how to fight 6 men. We can teach you how to engage 600.
And of course, the villains in this one, Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson. Gotta love Liam Neeson, he appears in a lot of good movies.
Are you so desperate to fight criminals that you lock yourself in to take them on one at a time?
Now what worked for Batman Begins, and obviously still does today, was the grounded realism that it brought forward in the Batman movie. You know, there was, well, no CGI monsters, just fear, corruption, and paranoia. As well as I feel that, you know, Christian Bale actually pulled off a really good Batman for these movies.
He'll talk to me.
He plays, you know, a tormented and, like, intense, just really drained person that's just had enough of life and had enough with evil people and corruption, and he just wants to do it his way. And as well as, you know, just pulling Liam Neeson in on this one, playing Ra's al Ghul.
I warned you about compassion, Bruce.
It was awesome to see him, even in the fight scenes that he had with Christian Bale and how they actually portrayed them and played them out.
You will never learn.
It was really cool to see Liam Neeson jump in there in a fighting role. Also as well in the cast, you know, you had Morgan Freeman.
Didn't you get the memo?
Gary Oldman. And who can forget Michael Caine.
And you can borrow the rolls if you like. Just bring it back with a full tank.
You know, the theme of this one was that fear was a weapon and that you could just be more than just a man. I feel that Christopher Nolan didn't just reboot Batman with this one, he actually gave us a new blueprint to run with all the new action movies or superhero movies that we have these days. Now, as usual, it had its hits and its knocks. Critics thought that, you know, it came across too serious and it was a bit too intense for, you know, a Batman movie. As well as you had the comic book people come across, well, it wasn't as flashy and as comic book related as what the original ones that we've seen in the 90s. But I feel you have to have a bit of give and take with that one, because I actually really love the films from the 90s, but as well as I love these ones, as well as the new one that had Dark Knight with Heath Ledger playing the Joker. That was an unbelievable role that he did. I feel if you just look away from it and actually see that it's, take away that it's a Batman movie and just look at it, it's a great movie, story, and just effects as well as the fighting. It's just an awesome movie all round. And you just take it away from being Batman and it's a really great movie of 2005.
I won't kill you. But I don't have to save you.
And as well, this movie pretty much kicked off or sparked the Dark Knight trilogy that we all know and love today. As well as it also proved that superhero movies could be artistic, philosophical, and meaningful. And my final thoughts on Batman Begins is it didn't just resurrect the Bat, it gave us a whole new genre to look at and sparked a whole new possibilities of superhero movies that now we have. Alrighty guys, let's keep cracking along with the next one. Let's get on to it. Alright, this next movie gave us a stretchy scientist, a flaming Chris Evans, and more product placement than a NASCAR track. It was messy, goofy, but still fantastic. And one of my personal favourites, so let's go check out Fantastic Four.
We will be going directly to our lab to diagnose our symptoms.
Symptoms? Is this some kind of disease?
So this Marvel movie, before the MCU, came out on July 7th, 2005, and was directed by Tim Story. Now, as well, we got to come into the 2005, I feel that comic book films were still trying to figure out how to portray them and put them on the big screen. Now, of course, the origin story for Fantastic Four was cosmic radiation mutates 4 astronauts and a scientist.
Ben, turn around.
Now, of course, the team included Chris Evans as the Human Torch, Jessica Alba as Susan Storm, Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm.
You also remember what you swore to do with every breath in your body?
Lauren Gruffudd as Mr. Fantastic, and Julie McMahon playing the villain, Victor Von Doom.
So it's not just my money you want, it's my toys.
Now, I feel this movie stood out in 2005 because it had serious potential, but it just had a little bit of awkward writing behind it. Now, let's get into what actually made it hit for 2005. Now, what really worked for this movie in 2005 was, of course, Chris Evans as Johnny Flame, the Human Torch. Now, every time he was in the scene, he stole the show, definitely with that one. But it was also funny, you know, of course, back then they didn't think about it, but getting down into the MCU universe as him being Captain America, I wonder if any of us ever thought if he was going to reprise his role as Johnny Flame. But then, of course, as usual, it was awesome to see that he popped up in Deadpool Wolverine as reprising that role. As well as I feel that Michael Chiklis actually nailed the tragic story of the Thing, of how turning into the Thing, lost his family, drove him away from people, and pretty much he didn't want to be around anybody anymore.
Deb, it's me. It's still me.
And you actually felt that throughout the movie. And of course, Susan Storm and Mr. Fantastic, even though, you know, they definitely looked the part, it didn't feel like they actually had sort of like the chemistry like they were supposed to have in the comic books, of course. But I even remember watching it back in 2005. It was a very bright, family-friendly movie. The action scenes were actually pretty cool for 2005. You know, especially scenes like the bridge rescue. That was a pretty good one, you got to admit that. It felt like the movie sort of embraced, rather being silly than being, you know, dark, and, you know, the way it was sort of going. They were looking the lines of, you know, the way Batman Begins sort of came out. Because I feel Batman Begins sort of really overshadowed Fantastic Four. Even though Fantastic Four is still an awesome movie, Batman Begins, when it came out, sort of blew this bad boy out of the water. You know, to me, it wasn't like they were sort of being like Christopher Nolan. They were sort of trying to be like the Saturday morning cartoons on a massive budget. And of course, with every movie, they have their critics. And of course, it was the special effects people on this side saying that the special effects were outdated, especially for the way that they used on Mr. Stretch. And the critics, of course, came in and started bashing Julian McMahon. I gotta love him because he's an Australian actor, and he was in Charmed for his actual portrayal of Victor Von Doom. They said he was a bit lackluster in, you know, how he should have portrayed him. But, of course, in my personal opinion, I think the Fantastic Four of 2005 did exceptionally well, and still to this date is a great movie. You know, it's almost like a time capsule of superheroes before things in superhero movies got real serious. Now, where does the future go for the Fantastic Four? I find it sort of funny and ironic that the original 2005 movie is turning 25 this year, and now they're bringing out a new Fantastic Four movie possibly this year that's going to be pretty epic by the looks of it, but again, going back to the quirky sort of 50s style of doing the movies. So yeah, my final take on Fantastic Four is it's sort of like, you know, a goofy family vacation. Like, you're definitely going to go, maybe there's going to be some mischief, some shenanigans that are going to happen. Might even come back with some blood and some broken bones, but it's definitely going to be fun and worth the watch. Now let's get into this cult classic that even I forgot that was going to turn 25 this year. Alright, just quickly guys, just like to thank you all for liking and watching my videos. All my Oz subscribers, I love you. Anyone new that's made to this far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's get on to the next one. Now the next one is a cult classic that even I forgot that was going to turn 25 this year, and it's a sci-fi banger. Now this sci-fi classic was a little show that died too soon, and the movie that gave us one last flight. Serenity is more than a sequel to Firefly. It's a love letter to rebels, found families, and underdogs. Now this sci-fi masterpiece was released on 30 September 2005, and was directed by Josh Whedon. It was based on a beast of a TV show that was cancelled, Firefly. Now, any sci-fi lovers actually know the series Firefly and how, yeah, she got cancelled a bit too soon and we were left in the lurch, and thank God Serenity came in and finished off the story that we needed. And that was a beautiful thing about Serenity. It came in and sort of helped us close off the chapters that we needed to see. Like River Thames powers, the Alliance secrets, and the truth about the Reavers. And as we all know, Captain Reynolds leads a ragtag crew aboard the spaceship Serenity. And for me, this movie was like in a space, or well, in a verse where the little guy normally gets crushed. Serenity flew one last mission and didn't hold back. Now, what worked with Serenity? I feel that every crew member shined. Like, they played their roles to the T. You know, especially Captain Reynolds' arc from cynic to protector.
We're after is not doors, so let's have no undue fussing.
And you know, a big one I think that got us all was River's transformation from, you know, being a broken psychic into being an unbelievable warrior. Especially that scene at the end with the Reavers. I couldn't believe that. The first time I seen that, I had to rewatch it a couple of times because it was the best scene I'd ever seen in a sci-fi movie, bar my Star Wars. It was definitely a quirky, sharp, emotional, you know, sort of a roller coaster of emotions on this one. It definitely knew how to throw in the humour as well as the heartbreak, that's definite for sure.
Watch out.
Wash! Baby! Baby, no! Baby, come on, you gotta go!
It really felt like it was an emotional gut punch in sci-fi cinema. It was so insane, the twists that they had in this movie. It was definitely really bold, definitely a lot brutal. But it gave us the closure that we needed for the Firefly series, especially us sci-fi fans that watch the Firefly series.
Sir?
Now, of course, critics as well as people came in to do it. Realistically, if you hadn't seen the Firefly series, you didn't really understand the emotional weight that Serenity came with. Like, it still even can't explain it. If you haven't seen Firefly, go out and check Firefly the series out before you actually go and watch Serenity, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about this movie. Especially the end scene where, like they say, you get to see River's performance of being a broken psychic into an unbelievable warrior. And when you see that, if you see that, come back and tell me about it. Write in the comments what you thought about that scene. And of course, it didn't do that well at the box office. Like, you know, it wasn't no Snow White bad, but it didn't do the best. And of course, back in those days, 2005, critics really dived on how you did at the box office to how the movie was going to go further on down the track. And of course, as time dragged on, it became a cult classic. It was always one of my favourites, being a sci-fi boy, but it brought a lot of other people along, and then I guess that's when they went out themselves and watched Firefly. It almost felt like it gave us a little bit of it inspired us to, you know, maybe there's a potential for other shows that got cancelled to maybe be brought back or a movie made about them, just to give us a little bit of closure on some of them. And I feel as a fan of Firefly that Serenity didn't just end the story for us, it completed it. It was a really good movie, and I was surprised that they even were going to do a movie after the show got cancelled. So good on them for coming out and doing the Serenity movie and bringing the old cast along for it. Alright, my final thoughts and verdicts on it is I feel that Serenity and Firefly was one of the best transitions that you ever had from TV to movie. It didn't even change realistically. You just still felt like it was a show but in movie form, and that they ended it. And, you know, as usual, being a cult classic, it just shows you how fandom can be kept alive with us passing on the knowledge that we have of our movies onto our kids or people who haven't actually seen them and might be interested but haven't actually had the balls to go and have a look. And my final thoughts on Serenity, guys, is you can't shut down a good story, and that proves the point with Serenity. Is they tried to shut down a good story with Firefly, and what would you know, Serenity came out of nowhere and finished off the story and gave us what we needed, guys. And that's it today, guys. So these are 6 iconic movies that are turning 25 this year. Now, if your favourite movie wasn't in there from 2005, drop it down in the comments and let me know. And for all my old subscribers, thank you for watching my videos. Anyone new that made it this far and still watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.